I discovered my wicked uncle sold me to a cursed old man, and the truth was even darker. I never should have opened that door. The moment my fingers brushed the cold, rusted handle, a chill slithered down my spine. Something deep inside me screamed to turn back, but curiosity pulled me closer. As I stepped inside, shadows engulfed me. My world was simple before waking up, going to school, hanging out with friends. Yet now, here I was, entrapped in an old building that reeked of damp wood and decay. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. Whispers, soft and sinister, drifted through the dark halls, as if the walls themselves were alive, eager to share their secrets. In the corner of the room, a flickering light illuminated a faded portrait, a man with wild, disheveled hair and eyes that almost seemed to glow. I couldn't shake the feeling he was watching me, waiting. My heart raced, heavy thumps echoing in my ears. I nudged a chair, but it moved without my touch, sliding across the floor as if it were alive. Panic shot through me. The air felt thin, suffocating. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the far side of the room. My body instinctively froze. What was that? I strained to listen, but the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I could barely breathe. The shadows danced across the walls, taunting me as if they were hungry for my fear. Every nerve in my body was screaming to flee, to escape, but I was rooted to the spot. I could see something stirring in the corner of my eye. My hands trembled as I turned, and there it was. A shadowy figure, darker than the night itself, creeping closer. Its shape twisted grotesquely, and as it reached towards me, a feeling of dread washed over me. That instant felt like an eternity, frozen in time. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound escaped. The figure loomed ever closer, my heart pounding like a drum. What was its intention? My mind raced. The cursed old man, the deals made, the wicked uncle, all of it collided in a haze of terror. Just as I felt the chill of its breath, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. I was trapped. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness was a thick blanket, suffocating, wrapping around me and constricting any remnants of hope. I was alone, utterly alone, except for that figure that loomed with an insatiable desire. I could hear my heartbeat raging in my ears, a frantic, desperate rhythm cutting through the heavy silence. And yet, that silence was punctuated by whispers, soft and treacherous, each syllable a caress that sent chills cascading down my spine. With trembling hands, I reached for the cold, rusty doorknob in a futile attempt to escape, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, weaving in and out of my consciousness. Stay with us, stay forever. The words slithered through the air, sinking deeper into my mind, igniting a fear so profound it paralyzed me. Then came the sound, a soft, almost human laugh that echoed through the void. My pulse quickened. The figure froze just beyond my line of sight, and I felt the air shift, a heavy anticipation haunting the room. Creaks and groans of the aging building responded to my fear, the very foundations of this cursed abode alive with restless spirits. I turned slowly, and my eyes widened. The portrait was no longer still. The eyes of the man had shifted, now filled with a sinister mirth that seemed to mock my terror. I stumbled back, colliding with the wall, as the laughter morphed into a cacophony of maniacal shrieking. It reverberated in my skull, drowning out my thoughts, my screams. Desperately, I clawed at the walls, my nails scraping against the aged wood, but no escape was found. My gaze sharpened towards the corner where the shadows pooled like spilled ink. The figure flickered between depths of darkness and flickers of dim light. I could make out its shape now, an elongated creature, with an inhuman grin that promised nothing but torment. And it had gleaming eyes that glowed like the embers of a dying fire, fixed only upon me. "Join us," it rasped, voice like gravel grinding against glass. "You were chosen." The room began to bend and warp, reality felt loose, as if I were caught in the throes of someone's waking nightmare. Furniture shifted, lurched forward, and I could feel that dreadful feeling of being pulled towards the figure against my will. I fought to stay anchored, battling against the unseen force that sought to draw me in, but the whispers only grew louder, more insistent. "Your time has come, your legacy awaits you." I was paralyzed, my body trembled not only from fear but from a sickening sense of inevitability. I recalled my uncle's cruel laugh, the promises of power, the sinister bargain forged in darkness. He had known what lay in wait for me, at the end of this malevolent path. Suddenly, the air around me shimmered, and I was swept away. I stood before a door that hadn't been there moments before. It was intricately carved, adorned with grotesque figures, their contorted faces whispering silent prayers to forgotten gods. This door felt ancient, a portal to the darkness that held me captive. As if drawn by an invisible string, my trembling hand reached for the door, the whispers turning into anguished wails. They begged me not to open it, yet I was trapped in an all-consuming need to understand. I pressed my palm against the cold surface, feeling a surge of power that coursed through me, binding my fate in ways I could not yet comprehend. The door creaked open, revealing a vortex of shadows swirling within, promising secrets but cloaked in terror. The figure beckoned me from the depths, jaws stretched wide in a ghastly welcome. "It's time, embrace your true self." As I hesitated, a crack emerged in the foundation behind me, splintering the ground beneath my feet. The shadows twisted and pulled, threatening to engulf me entirely. Panic set in, and just as I turned to flee, the room broke apart. There was no longer a solid foundation to stand on, the world was collapsing around me, and I was lost in the chaos. In that split second, before I surrendered to the void, I thought I heard my name tear through the night, a familiar voice echoing from the depths of despair. "Help me!" It was then the door slammed shut with a final, furious bang, locking me in a suffocating darkness, the last remnants of hope snuffed out like a flickering candle in an endless night. The only sound was the echo of my own breath, intermingled with the chilling realization that I wasn't alone after all. The whispers returned, now wrapped in a sinister laughter, and as the ground began to fall away beneath my feet, I found myself facing not just the shadows but the terrible truth of my own legacy. The icy fingers of dread tightened around my throat as I stood in the darkness, grappling with the horrifying understanding of my inheritance. The air, thick with despair, seemed to pulse with life, wrapping itself around me like a serpent ready to strike. I was ensnared in a web of my own making, woven by the wicked hands of my uncle and the ghastly figure that lurked within the shadows. In that stifling, suffocating darkness, the memories of my childhood came crashing down like a torrent. My uncle's twisted grin as he spun tales of buried treasure and unsuspected power. Days spent in this very house, now a prison of nightmares. I grasped at those memories, searching for a semblance of something light, something that wasn't shrouded in occult shadows. But the light had long since been extinguished, swallowed whole by the yawning void. Just as panic threatened to consume me, the darkness flickered ominously. A sliver of light sliced through the black, casting eerie shapes upon the walls, twisted faces, wretched smiles, like the very spirits trapped within the frames that lined this accursed mansion. The whispers grew more intense as if they sensed my rising fear, merging into a rhythmic chant that resonated deep within my psyche. "Join the feast, join the dance, surrender your soul." As the chorus of voices spiraled into madness, I fell to my knees, my heart hammering against my chest like a wild bird trapped in a cage. My thoughts raced back to the portrait in the hallway, the cursed heirloom that had begun this descent into hell. I could almost feel its eyes upon me even now, judging, hungry for the secrets I had not yet uncovered. "Uncle!" I screamed into the abyss, desperation fueling my voice. "What have you done? Where are you?" The shadows stirred, and with terrifying serenity, the figure advanced, stepping forth like a specter materializing from a nightmare. It moved with glacial slowness, a mockery of humility draped in malevolence. Its grin split wider, revealing rows of crooked teeth that glistened like polished bone in the dim light. "Your uncle is but a whisper now," it hissed, its voice coiling around me, tightening like a noose. He left you to me. To us. But you will never be alone again, never alone, the chorus chimed, each voice layered upon the last, spiraling into a dissonant symphony of despair. Something within me screamed to break free, to claw my way back to the surface before I was dragged into whatever dark fate lay nestled beyond the threshold. I surged to my feet, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The room lurched again, as if echoing my resolve, and the whispers devolved into a frantic cacophony of conflicting secrets that clawed at my sanity. Your legacy, your inheritance, becomes one with the darkness. In that moment of chaos, I glimpsed a shadow flitting at the edges of the flickering light, another figure, smaller, almost childlike, twisted in anguish. The face felt familiar, a distant echo of forgotten laughter drowned in the depths of memory. My breath caught as recognition washed over me. Who are you? I screamed, feeling terror seep into my bones. What do you want? It stepped closer, its features obscured, but as it leaned into the light, I gasped. Me reflection, my image, yet distorted, wrapped in tendrils of shadow. Help me, it whispered, the sound barely more than a breath, but filled with an unbearable weight. Why? Why are you here? I shouted, incredulity fueling my pleas. Because you are the key, it replied, the words laced with a sorrowful resignation that chilled me to the core. You must remember the night your uncle made his bargain. With each revelation, my pulse quickened, as splintered images of that night sought to claw their way back into my consciousness. Fiery pain danced across my skin, and as I squeezed my eyes shut, drowned in the tide of memories struggling to break free, the figure before me blinked, its eyes reflecting unearthly torment. The shadows around me curled tighter, the room sinking deeper into the ocean of dark, and just as I felt my grip on reality shatter, the walls shivered and groaned, threatening to cave in on me. Then, with a final screech, the air chilled as the figure, the part of me I never wanted to acknowledge, let out a haunting laugh that echoed in the emptiness, distorting into a chorus of mocking voices. The door I had found moments ago reappeared, battered and bruised, beckoning me once more. But this time, as darkness enveloped me, the shadows loomed larger, each soul entwined with mine, waiting, eager for the next sacrifice. Open the door. The echo of my own voice called desperately, and as I stumbled forward, the ground gave way beneath me. Time seemed to dilate as the weight of dread crushed downwards, and as I reached for the knob, I felt a cold grip seizing my wrist, dragging me back into the confounding fold of darkness. Stay with us, it hissed as I was pulled down, the whispers now closer, piercing through the malignant void, and the last thing I heard before the world shattered was my own voice, distant yet achingly familiar, pleading through the cacophony, help me before it's too late. The darkness must have swallowed me whole, for when consciousness returned, I found myself lying on the cold stone floor of a chamber I did not recognize. Shadows wove around me like living fabric, a heavy blanket of despair that seeped into my skin. Echoes of muffled voices and distant, pained cries reverberated through the air, clawing at the edges of my sanity. My memories felt fragmented, pulsating like the beating of a wounded heart, familiar yet undeniably alien, chaos mingling with the pallor of regret that I struggled to my feet and squinted into the gloom. My heart raced as I took in the grotesque surroundings, a sepulchral room adorned with strewn relics of lives long extinguished. Candelabras, twisted and laden with cobwebs, stood guard over empty alcoves, their flickering flames contorting into distorted, wavering shadows that danced with lurid intent. Help me, a disembodied voice whispered, chilling me to the bone. Not my own, this voice felt like a current, winding through the air and binding itself to my very essence. I turned in its direction, searching the darkness for the source. The walls began to shift, pulsating gently like a living entity. Portraits of those lost to time loomed larger, their eyes following my every move, filled with an insatiable hunger. As I approached the nearest figure, the painted smile twisted into something sinister, almost mocking, a hollow reminder of dreams turned to nightmares. What have you done to me? I cried into the void, the words scraping against the walls like nails against metal. The space echoed my despair back in a mocking symphony, swelling and contracting until it seemed the very air grew thick with malignant intent. Your uncle's deal was but the beginning, a guttural voice rumbled from the shadows, slithering forth like a serpent through the cracks, sending icy fingers racing along my spine. You are bound to us now. A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision drew my attention, and the childlike figure returned, its translucent form rippling with sorrow. Each feature more indistinct than the last, yet I felt connected to it, as though it held the key to my past me, fear intermingled with something deeper. Something hopeful, please, I whispered, voice trembling. I need to understand, must remember, it murmured, its eyes wells of dark sorrow. Steeling myself, I dug into my fading memories, feeling the weight of a presence stir within me. The images returned fragmented and twisted, a fire burning bright in the hearth, my uncle hunched in a corner, chanting words in a guttural language. Darkness creeping across the floor as figures emerged, shadowy silhouettes clawing hungrily toward me. The specter's words echoed. He sold you willingly. But it was not for the sake of power, it was for salvation. Salvation? I choked out, nausea swelling in my belly. What are you saying? Your soul is bound to the legacy, it lamented. To the darkness. It hungers. As the realization washed over me, seeping into my very being, the room shuddered violently, shadows convulsing as if in pain. What felt like 1,000 lamenting souls deepened the atmosphere, their wails an unholy chorus that spiraled into madness. Despair clawed at my insides as terror gripped me, squeezing my heart as the chamber began to contract, forcing the air from my lungs. Join us, the voice called again, commanding yet mournful. Embrace your fate. No. I screamed, rage surging through my veins as I fought against the suffocating pull. The walls seemed to close in on me, grasping gnarled hands of shadow reaching forth, seeking to envelop me completely. I darted back, falling to the floor, clawing at the stone in a desperate attempt to escape the encroaching void. Remember the bargain. The figure drifted closer, a muted echo of memory piercing through the fog of anguish. In that instant, I saw it clearly, me uncle's hollow eyes, the flicker of madness dancing within them as he sealed the fate of not just himself, but me. A familiar chant, repeated over and over, weaving a net of darkness around a child still unsure of the monster's grin lurking behind. Suddenly, something shifted within the walls around. Mecraks snaked their way along the stone, illuminating ancient symbols that pulsed with a fierce, ghostly light. The whispers crescendoed, entwining around one another in a frenzied chant, urging me to join their ranks. What's happening? I gasped, scrambling to my feet. As the walls began to tremble, a loud crack reverberated through the chamber, and the very foundation of the room started to splinter apart. Release! The child cried, voice terrified yet resolute. Before the pact binds you too. But as I surged toward the splintering wall, the shadows erupted around me. Tendrils of darkness snaked up my legs, pulling me back, rooting me in place as I fought against the overwhelming tide. Please! I wailed, feeling the malevolence seep into my bones. Not like this. I won't be a part of this. The walls splintered one final time, and from the gaping breach emerged a figure bathed in an otherworldly glow, a grotesque visage, twisted into a chilling semblance of a smile adorned with icy eyes that bore into my very soul. The air thickened with an oppressive presence, something ancient and powerful, and as my scream escaped me, a hand shot through the darkness, clamping tightly around my throat. Welcome home, it whispered, the voice reverberating in my ears like a bell tolling doomsday, just as the room began to collapse into the abyss. And with one final breath, I was yanked away from the light, darkness consuming everything, leaving only the sound of my voice, an echo in the void. Help me! The darkness wrapped around me like a living shroud, the sound of my heartbeat resounding in the void, pulsing in rhythm with the suffocating dread that consumed my mind. Light flickered at the edges of my vision. The remnants of the chamber were gone, replaced by an endless expanse of black, fractured only by writhing shadows that darted to and fro, whispering secrets in a language I could not understand. As I was pulled deeper into this purgatorial abyss, the world of memory and sanity evaporated behind me like morning dew, and terror seeped into every crevice of my being. I could still feel the icy grip of that haunted hand around my throat, the weight of its malignance lingering like a curse. The shrieking wails of countless souls echoed throughout the void, their cries clawing at my ears, desperate, begging me to listen. Remember, a voice hissed from the depths, clawing its way back into my consciousness with the persistence of a nightmarish specter. It was the child again, its form flickering like a candle in the wind, with eyes that spoke volumes of pain. You must remember. They need you to complete the circle. What circle? I shouted into the darkness, my words swallowed whole by the yawning chasm around me. What have you done to me? The air shifted, swirling with heavy whispers that surrounded me like specters in a funeral dirge. I felt the shadows pulse, rising and swirling in a seductive dance. They beckon me closer, promising knowledge and power. At the steepest cost, they crave it, the others do. They thirst for flesh, for lifeblood. They wish to consume what remains of the covenant. The child's voice trembled, a sorrowful echo of an ancient lament, but I don't understand. I cried, desperation bubbling to the surface. What covenant? Your uncle's deeds echo through time. His bargain wove you into the very fabric of this realm, and now you're the key, it murmured, sorrow palpable in its tone. Flee while you can or embrace your fate. My mind raced as the implications of its words twisted like a double-edged sword. Throbbing images shot through my consciousness, dark incantations, twisted pages filled with blood and sacrifice, and above all, the unmistakable presence of my uncle, laughing madly in the eye of a storm of chaos. I felt sick at the thought of the contingency that lurked beneath the surface, ready to engulf me. Suddenly, the darkness shuddered violently as though responding to my unease. A low growl vibrated through the air, a symphony of discontent that sent tremors through the void. Shadows turned into forms, distorted images, vague outlines of grotesque beings. Limbs twisted like brittle branches, mouths gaping in haunting agony. The swarm surged forward, eyes like glowing coals that burned with malign hunger. In that moment, clarity sliced through the confusion, revealing a fragment of a Visiona pact, a ritual gone violently wrong, the chains of my family's dark legacy wrapping around my soul. There I started, but the words were drowned out by their ravenous cries. Feed! Feed the darkness, I stumbled back, frantic. The child floated beside me, its soft gaze anchored in an unexpected sense of calm amidst the horror. You must not yield. They will take your light, they want your essence. With a newfound resolve, I turned to confront the tide of unspeakable horrors. Get back! I shouted, summoning the last vestige of strength within me. But my voice faltered as shadowy figures pressed forward, advancing as if they could sense my fear, their hands clawing at the air, drawing nearer and nearer. In that moment of aching despair, a flicker of light emerged from deep within my memories, a brief glimpse of an ancient pendant, twisted and worn, hidden in shadows, yet pulsing with a vibrant energy. It was an anchor to the light that might save me. Find the talisman. The child implored, its ethereal form flickering dangerously at the edges of reality. It will shield you, this is what they want. I yelled, desperation drowning out my thoughts as darkness clung to me. I turned and ran, my feet pounding against the unforgiving ground of the shifting abyss. All around me, spectral forms lunged, their breath cold upon my skin. I felt a presence wrapping around me, pulling me closer to the brink of madness while hunger gripped my senses. Help me! I cried into the darkness, but my words fell silent beneath the cacophony of tortured souls. Then, just as I felt the shadows closing in, the world around me erupted. A blinding flash of light shattered the oppressive void, scattering the figures back. The resonance of an ancient incantation echoed, reverberating in the walls of my mind. Holding my breath, I plunged into the light, praying that it would grant me passage. But the shadows screeched in fury, pulling at my ankles, dragging me down. No! I won't be afraid anymore. I roared, determination igniting my core. I found myself face to face with a visage born of nightmares, the same grotesque figure that had pulled me into this madness. Your light belongs to us, it hissed, a chorus of gluttonous voices tumbling over one another in ravenous glee. You won't take me. I shouted defiantly, and the ground beneath me trembled as I steeled myself for an escape. But then, from the depths of the shadows, a chilling realization about the darkness loomed before me with sharpened clarity. Join us, it whispered once more, the hunger in its tone unmistakable, pulling at the very fibers of my soul. You have nowhere left to run. With an agonizing wrenching, the ground split open and drew me in, deeper into the abyss, and I felt the darkness wrap around my heart, smothering every ounce of light as laughter echoed around me, consuming all hope. And as the void swallowed everything whole, the last thing I heard was the haunting gasp of the child's voice, forever trailing behind me, "You must remember." The shadows tightened their grip around my limbs, constricting like the slow, inevitable tightening of a noose. I plummeted deeper into the obsidian void, my heart pounding wildly against the cold embrace of despair. A cacophony of horrific whispers burrowed into my mind, echoing with the sinister delights of the damned, taunting me with remnants of my own memories, the faces of loved ones, home, and innocence now reduced to cruel specters of what used to be. "Remember the pact." The child's voice reverberated in the recesses of my thoughts, persistent like the haunting moans of a funeral dirge. "It lies within you." "What pact?" My uncle's name vibrated like a curse on my tongue, a name woven into each fiber of my being, twisted and corrupted. I clutched at the fragments of my past scattered throughout this infinite desolation. Each recollection felt like a shard of glass, a weapon that could either cut me free or end my existence. I and the inky expanse, familiar silhouettes began to coalesce around me, their features emerging from the swirling abyss. Faces twisted in anguish and despair stared back, their mouths opening in silent pleas for release. For a fleeting moment, fear was overtaken by recognition. These were the souls my uncle had stolen, trapped in a relentless torment, bound to his wicked designs. "Child." One of them shrieked, their voice a dissonant wail that struck at the core of my being. "You must break the circle. Don't let his darkness claim you, leave me." I screamed, fighting against the surge of despair that threatened to pull me under. The spectral forms shifted and morphed with grotesque agility, their hands reaching out, longing for salvation. The shadows surged forward, encircling me within a cacophony of echoing cries, a hunger so profound it resonated like thunder in my ears. It felt as if the very fabric of this realm was stitching itself around me, constricting with each heartbeat. I could smell the fador of decay and desperation rising from the shadows. It clawed at my throat, threatening to choke out any remaining fragments of hope I clung to. No. I gasped, fighting back against the pull of despair. "I refuse to join you," yet, the darkness sensed my defiance. It pulsed and shifted, a living entity writhing with insatiable hunger. I turned, searching for an escape, but there was nothing but the shimmering abyss closing around me. The air was electric, crackling with malevolence. "Come to us," the voices hissed, echoing like a chilling lullaby. "Join your uncle in hell." The child's spectral form flickered beside me once more. "You are stronger than the darkness. Remember the binding, your power lies within the pendant." Fingers trembling, I fished through my pocket, searching for the talisman that would liberate my soul from its clutches. But what if the pendant was just an illusion, a false hope sewn into the fabric of my torment? Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced through my chest, and I fell to my knees. The darkness seeped within me, clawing and gnashing at my insides. Visions flared to life. I saw my uncle's face, a twisted mask of joy as he completed unspeakable rituals, threading together life and death with every drop of blood spilled. With every flicker of the past that danced before me, anguish twisted in my stomach. "No!" I cried, wrenching my eyes away from the harrowing spectacle. Panic surged through my veins. There was no time. The shadows coalesced into a single grotesque shape, its visage reflective of my own terror. The child's voice, a mere whisper now, fought against the tide. "Search your heart, find your strength." Steeling myself, I shut my eyes against the emerging darkness, me breathing rapid and ragged. I channeled every ounce of fear, every fragment of despair into a singular thought: freedom. The ground trembled as I grasped the pendant in my hand, its energy thrumming to life, warm, bright, and undeniably alive. With a primal scream, I thrust the pendant forward, channeling every last breath into breaking the chains that bound me to this unholy pact. The shadows erupted in a chorus of shrieks, recoiling and fragmenting as the pendant came alive, a radiant glow illuminating the void that surrounded me. But the shadows were not done yet. The air thickened with a foul stench, and from the depths, an abysmal laughter rolled forth. I opened my eyes just in time to witness a monstrous apparition clawing its way into the blinding light, an otherworldly entity, its grotesque form bloodied and twisted, with eyes that burned with ancient wrath. Foolish child. It bellowed, voice reverberating like a death knell. You think you can escape your fate? This is only the beginning, and in that moment, before I could react, the shadows erupted once more, engulfing me entirely, dragging me back toward the gaping maw of perdition, the embodiment of my uncle's wrath revealed, threatening to devour the very essence of my being. Remember, the echo of the child's voice slipped through the chaos, softer now, almost a sigh. Only you can break the curse, and darkness consumed me whole. Something snapped as the malevolent vortex swallowed me. I was yanked from reality, propelled into an opaque realm where no light dared to tread. My senses were inundated with terror, the air thick with an oppressive weight, as if reality itself were clinging to me with clammy fingers. Pain licked at my consciousness, each breath like fire, igniting memories buried deep beneath the tumultuous waves of anguish and despair. Around me, the shadows clawed and scraped, whispering riddles of my fate, while ephemeral arms reached out, energies tethered to forgotten loves and lost promises. I recognized their faces soon enough. They morphed and twisted, showing the lives my uncle had wrenched from the worlds of the living. You will never escape. They mourned, voices overlapping, a symphony of sorrow casting a spell of paralyzing dread. Suddenly, I jolted awaker thought I had. I found myself in a room, dimly lit and filled with cobwebs suspended like the ghostly fingers of long-lost souls. My body lay on a cold stone slab, and the memories of the abyss faded in and out like disconnected radio waves. Whatever passes for time here felt broken, could taste despair in the air, sharp and metallic, resonating against the back of my throat that I bolted upright. Two men were hunched over a table, flickering candlelight casting elongated shadows that danced grotesquely on the walls. Their faces were obscured by the flickering glow, but their intentions were palpably a visceral fog of dread that clung to the edges of my perception. I was ensnared in a horror play of their design, my movements sluggish as I stumbled toward them, desperate to hear their conversation. You whispered her name, one man growled, voice low and hoarse, laced with a hunger I recognized, mirroring my uncle's unquenchable greed. You promised me if I sacrificed her, the power would be mine, binding the curse beneath our feet. The other man, taller and shrouded in shadows, responded in tones so whispery they seemed to dissolve into the air. You misunderstand. The curse has no master. It changes, it twists a living thing. You think this child is a pawn in your game, but she will break the cycle and take the curse with her. I froze, heart pounding. The air crackled with energy, a palpable disturbance that surged through the space, the room darkening with remorse. Were they discussing me? Was I merely collateral in some wicked endeavor? What do you know? I heard the first man demand, his voice rising, filled with panic. No one escapes the binding, she will return, services rendered. Before I could comprehend their fragmented exchanges any further, the temperature plunged. An icy wind whipped through the room, extinguishing the candles one by one, until only a single flickering flame remained, a beacon of fragile hope amidst an overwhelming void. The men turned their attention toward me. Awake at last, the tall man hissed. His eyes glowed with imminent threat, a storm brewing behind them. You forge your own path now. Adrenaline surged through me. I darted backward, but the shadowy tendrils reached for me, wrapping around my wrists, pulling me into their pulsating depths. As I struggled, choking on fear, the first man lunged toward me, but the shadows pulled him into the impossibility, snatching him into their ravenous embrace. No, he screamed, voice distorted and desperate. I staggered away from the tableau of despair, my breath hitching, the cage of shadows closing in around me. My heart raced as thoughts of my uncle's wicked legacy bombarded my mind. I could almost hear his cruel laughter echoing through my memories, each sound a reminder of the pact created in the blood of the innocent. Behind me, an ornate door creaked open, an unnatural light spilling into the room like white fire spilling over a dark wound. Within its brilliance lay a figure draped in folds of fabric resembling stars in a night sky, a woman, no, a queen among spirits. Her features were ethereal, yet her eyes captured the sorrow of a millennia, deep wells that threatened to swallow me whole. Child, she spoke. Voice a haunting melody that reverberated through my bones. The lure is alive, feeding on your essence. I can guide your path to freedom, if only you're willing to accept the price. I hesitated, fear mingling with a glimmer of hope, the remnants of an idea swaying my heart. There was a barter to be made, a trap ingrained in every word. What is the price? How do I break this curse? The woman smiled sadly, the light shifting around her, swirling like a tempest of unwavering shadows. The truth lies within you, a truth darker than the void. To escape, you must sacrifice what is most precious. In that moment, reality shattered once more, and I was hurled into a kaleidoscope of chaotic visions. Me uncle's face and the image of a child wailing within a storm of shadow, my heart torn between two lifetimes. Memories brandished like weapons. And then the haunting realization crashed upon me. No. I gasped. I will not, but the darkness pulsed around me, the remnants of the past clawing at my soul. The Shadow Queen offered her hand, beckoning me closer, waiting for my final choice. I was standing on the precipice of a decision that could eclipse my very soul. As my heart raced wildly, the shadows began to chant in desperation, their voices an ever-rising chant that filled the air with madness. And then, I heard a familiar laugh. The sound curled around me, wrapping its cold tendrils around my heart. It was him. The shimmer of my uncle's malevolence seeped into the edges of this world, threatening to unravel everything. Choose. He taunted from beyond the veil, his voice echoing like a sinister wind. Your destiny awaits, child. Are you ready to embrace the darkness? And just like that, I stood at the brink of an unspeakable choice, a harrowing truth clawing at the edges of my impending doom. Would I betray everything I loved, or would I find a way to unearth the light hidden within this web of horror? But before I could decide, the shadows lunged forward, the darkness exploding with a terrifying fervor, and the world shifted like quicksand beneath my feet. The last thing I saw was the woman's gaze, haunting and pleading, and then the abyss swallowed me whole once more. I could feel the darkness encroaching, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud, threatening to drag me deeper into its malevolent embrace. I plummeted through an endless void, every inch of my being screaming against the pull of hopelessness. The kindness of the Shadow Queen faded, leaving a bitter aftertaste and a question echoing in my mind: what price was worth paying? With a sudden jolt, the floor crashed against my body, a violent impact that left me gasping. I blinked, staring up at a disorienting swirl of shadows and light. It took a moment for my mind to decipher my surroundings. This place was a ruin, once opulent but now marred by decay. Iridescent murals crumbled on the walls, tragic narratives of souls ensnared in their attempts to escape their fates. I stumbled to my feet, shaken, scanning the room, my heart pounding unequivocally in my chest. It felt as if the very air vibrated with secrets, saturating my senses with a heady cocktail of despair and dread. Was this merely another illusion, a ploy of my uncle's legacy to keep me contained within these walls? Suddenly, a stirring at the corner of my vision caught my attention. A shadow flickered and elongated, drawing closer. Tension tightened in my throat. Was it friend or foe? There, standing amidst the wreckage, the form of a child emerged. Grubby hands grasped tattered garments, and a face obscured by tangled hair turned toward me. Help me. The raspy voice called, weaving through the air like a mournful lullaby. Who are you? I asked, inching closer, pulse racing, curious yet cautious. That I am lost, she whimpered, tears glistening in her beady eyes, a mirror reflecting anguish I understood all too well. They took me from my home. They took me to feed the shadows. By the darkness. A chill ran down my spine, resonating with echoes of the looming dread. What do you mean? Who did this to you? Her eyes darted toward the expansive void. The tortured souls, they draw on the innocent. Your uncle, he's one of them. He holds the key, he still commands the shadows. At the mention of him, my stomach twisted. The thought of my wicked uncle pulling strings from some hidden lair filled me with anger and despair. What have I become part of? I whispered, dread flooding my veins. The child shook her head fiercely. You can't let him control you. You have to save me. You have to save them all. As she spoke, shadows began to coalesce around her, their grasp tauntingly intimate, coiling and condensing with sinister intent. A howling filled the air, crying from hidden corners, voices woven together in a tapestry of suffering. I turned to run, but the shadows extended like a web across all exits, dark tendrils curling and beckoning me back. No. I won't let him have you. I screamed, lurching towards the child only to find my legs moving sluggishly, weighted by unseen forces. With my light, we can break free, she urged, pleading with a terrifying sense of urgency. But you need to embrace the darkness. Only then can you wield it. Understand it. A mental battle raged within me. Was I truly prepared to embrace the very essence of horror that sullied my bloodline? I lunged toward the child, driven by instinct, only for the shadows to surround us both, swirling like a hurricane of despair. You must decide. A guttural voice echoed, a murmur slithering through the darkness. Will you embrace the shadow and reignite your power, or will you remain a prisoner of the light? My heart sank as I glanced at her, desperation reflected in her tear-streaked face. What if embracing the shadows meant succumbing to the very malevolence that I had fought so hard against? Yet, what if it was the only way to save us both? And at that moment, the shadows shifted violently, tearing and writhing as a more powerful presence emerged. I gasped as a whirlwind of darkness erupted before us, drawing strength from the child's fears and minion entity so horrifying that every fiber of my being screamed to flee. Too late. It thundered, voice distorting the very fabric of reality. You are ours now, the child shrieked, and I felt an all-consuming void crash over me. Just when it felt like the darkness would snuff out our very existence, a surge of light erupted from within me, igniting the shadows like a wildfire. The child's eyes widened in response, flickering hope sparking against encroaching despair, but before I could summon control, the child's scream morphed into an eerie laugh, synchronized with whispers rising around us, morphing together until the air thickened with dread. Checkmate. The shadows exploded outward, and my perception of reality splintered. That I was not just in danger of losing myself. I realized, in that moment of lucid clarity, that my uncle was nothing more than a player in a cosmic game beyond comprehension. With the dark fractals wrapping tighter around me, I knew only one thing: something far more sinister awaited us both within that impenetrable nightmare. In a flash of panic and realization, I understood I was now part of a wicked design far more terrible than I could have imagined. The true horror awaited just beyond, and as the shadows lunged forward, I braced myself for the unimaginable choice that lay at the threshold of oblivion. And then, as the darkness pulled me under, I heard the voice in a cacophony calling my name, unraveling the very core of my soul. Choose your destiny. The whispers drew closer, creeping in as I disappeared into the gloom. The chilling laughter followed, echoing against the remnants of my sanity. The void swallowed me whole, dragging my senses along a twisted path where light struggled to exist. I felt the shadows gnawing at my spirit, their icy fingers probing deeper and deeper, searching, invading. The cacophony of voices grew louder, melding into a symphony of torment, a chilling reminder that I was not alone in my descent. As my mind wrestled with the encroaching horror, my consciousness flickered like a dying flame. I found myself in a labyrinth of grim corridors, each more dismal than the last, the faded murals now replaced by grotesque depictions of despair. Faces twisted in anguish peered out from the walls, their mouths gagged by silence, hands outstretched as if begging for release. The child's laughter still echoed in my ears, taunting me even in the stillness of this wretched place, urging me to choose my destiny. I stumbled through the halls, a rhythmic pulse resonating beneath my feet, a heartbeat that seemed to pulse with dark life, guiding me towards something inevitable and horrifying. Around me, whispers swirled, tantalizingly close yet impossible to decipher. Shadows flickered at the periphery, but the oppressive darkness made it challenging to gauge their true nature. Were they hostile, or did they cry out for salvation? My heart raced as I approached a cracked doorway at the end of the corridor, a glimmer of light seeping through, promising answers. But at what cost? I hesitated, nerves tightening in my gut. What awaited on the other side? Despite my instincts pricking at me to turn back, an inexplicable force called me forward, as if the darkness itself conspired to unveil its secrets. I pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously, revealing a chamber illuminated by a flickering light, its source trembling on the edge of a cursed pedestal. A figure loomed in the shadows, cloaked and veiled, a sinister silhouette with the power to corrupt innocence. As the light danced around it, a ghastly visage emerged, one that twisted between the bounds of man and wretched beast. Its eyes glowed with a malevolence that chilled me to the bone, and I knew instantly this was the old man to whom my uncle had sold me. "Welcome, dear child," the voice slithered from his lips, foul and honeyed, wrapping around my senses like a noxious fog. "You've come to understand your true nature, have you not?" The bile rose in my throat. "What do you want with me?" I managed to choke out, a defiant spark lighting within my chest. A grin elongated unnaturally across his twisted face. "Oh, many things. But most importantly, to offer you a choice unlike those who came before you. I can make you a vessel of exquisite power or keep you trapped in this wretched limbo. All you need to do is surrender." I recoiled, horrified by the implications of his words. Surrender? Was he just another manifestation of the shadows, seeking to claim my essence for himself? My fingers clenched into fists as I clung to the remains of my resolve. "Never, stubbornness. Such a quaint trait," he chuckled, the sound grating against my skin. "Tell me, do you wish to save the little girl, or will you abandon her like the others? You know the darkness hungers for innocence, it will take her if you do nothing." My heart sank. In my pursuit of escape, I had left her behind. But how could I trust him? The knowledge of my uncle's betrayal weighed heavy on my conscience. "How do I know you won't betray me, too?" He leaned closer, his breath like death itself. "You don't. But then again, what do you have to lose? Nothing but this hollow existence. You can be something greater. Together, we could ascend through the shadows and break the chains of this wretched game." Suddenly, the room shuddered, a violent tremor running through the very foundations of this unholy desolation. The walls pulsated, shadowy figures writhing and contorting, crying out in agony. "Time is fleeting," the old man hissed, a mocking urgency lacing his tone. "Choose now, before your last chance fades into the abyss." But as he spoke, an unnatural chill crept in, bathing the room in frozen dread. The shadows thickened, undulating as if they were conscious, grasping desperately, seeking to envelop me. The little girl's sobs echoed in my mind, her face emerging through the swirling darkness. In that moment, clarity struck. This was a cruel test, a dark orchestration of fate entwined with my bloodline's legacy. I looked into the eyes of the vile creature before me and felt all the shadows pressing against me, relentless as they whispered seductive promises. My voice emerged, wavering but defiant, "Leave her alone. I refuse to be your pawn." The room erupted in chaos as the shadows recoiled, furious shrieks reverberating through the air. The old man cursed, his visage warping as he lunged forward, dark tendrils shooting from his outstretched hands. In a heartbeat, the world fragmented, the walls of reality collapsing under the weight of my choices. I was falling again, lost in an endless abyss of swirling shadows and shrieks of the damned, foolish girl. "You will regret that choice." The old man's voice rang in my ears as I fell, gravity losing its grip, and panic washed over me. Yet deep within, a flicker of defiance ignited, fueling my descent into an unimaginable darkness, and then silence engulfed me, a deafening quiet that was both welcomed and oppressive. I found myself suspended in nothingness, the presence of the child flickering faintly at the edges of my consciousness. Then I heard it laughter, not just the child's, but something far more sinister, a tangible malice intertwining with the echoes of my deepest fears. "Your choice remains," the shadows whispered as unholy eyes began to open around me, swirling into a vortex of chaos, stark against the void. But before I could comprehend the implications, the shadows lunged towards me. I could feel their grip tightening, pulling me toward an unknown fate that promised both horror and the fleeting chance for salvation. And as I braced myself for an impact far worse than death, I realized I wasn't simply being consumed, I was being drawn into the very core of the darkness itself. And in that moment, the laughter crescendoed, a chorus of despair that unveiled the true terror of my fate. As I floated in the cold, suffocating void, the laughter subsided, morphing into haunting whispers that intertwined, forming an abysmal melody, as if the shadows themselves were relishing my descent. I felt their presence everywhere, close, invasive, moist with despair. Each breath I took tasted of ashes and regrets, memories wailing from the intangible depths. I was no longer just afraid, I was terrified, as if I had become part of something far greater, an ancient legacy snared by predatory darkness yearning for sustenance. Suddenly, a flicker interrupted the void, a spark of thought igniting within the shambles of my consciousness. "You must remember," the child's voice fluttered through the darkness, tender yet insistent. "The truth lies in the past." Instinctively, I reached for my fading memories, but as I did, the shadows convulsed, reacting like living creatures chafing under the weight of their own dread. They clamored for freedom, their voices merging to form a cacophony of anguish, pleading for the release that eluded them. "Make it stop." I cried into the dark, but the shadows only grew more ravenous, clawing at me like lost souls seeking vengeance. Every echo of their sorrow resonated within me, urging to be remembered, to be acknowledged. The visions surged, swirling faster, colors morphed, revealing distorted fragments of the past, shadows of my uncle, chanting incantations drenched in malice, whispering deals that bound my fate, the dread realization that I was irrevocably tied to the darkness, just like him. In that moment, I understood, I was the vessel, not merely a pawn caught in a game. I was the embodiment of this vicious legacy, chosen, cursed, and thrust into an infernal pact that began generations before me. The bargain ushered me into this world, making me the key to their salvation, or damnation. A jolt of defiance coursed through me, igniting as I beheld the shape of the grotesque old man looming in the shadows, grinning with malevolence. "You thought you would escape?" he hissed, his voice dripping with malice and delight. "You carry their burden now, feeble child. You will become everything they feared." Beneath his twisted grin, I glimpsed the grotesque truth. I felt his hunger, the very essence of my bloodline, craving despair. It was intuitive rather than conscious, a visceral revelation that rooted itself deep within the marrow of my bones and soaked through my skin. I was tethered to this darkness, but I could break free. "Remember," the child echoed, emerging again from the shadows. Her spectral hand reached towards me, luminous amidst the chaos, a flickering beacon of hope. "You must embrace it, embrace it." I knelt within the abyss. How accessible the call of despair felt. It whispered promises of power, and my body shuddered at the weight of decisions left unmade, of acceptance unclaimed. Her eyes shone with an understanding of sacrifice, innocence repelled at the thought of menace in spite of fear but through it. Every soul yearning, their cries colliding in symphonic resonance that ignited a fire within me. "The darkness cannot consume you if you choose to wield it, enough." The old man's voice roared, reverberating through the void. Shadows coiled around him like serpents, drowning out the child's plea, trying to siphon my resolve. I trembled, their grasp was tangible, pulsing with a hunger that gnawed at my spirit. "Help me." I screamed again, now realizing it was both a plea and a demand. The shadows subsided momentarily, a protective barrier forming as I ripped my heart open for clarity. "I am not just a vessel," I bellowed, feeling the resonance of power within my words. "I will not allow you to claim me." With that proclamation, the shadows recoiled, howling in unison, built on centuries of evils and unspeakable sacrifices. I pulled the weight of the horror into my chest, anchoring myself at the precipice of existence. "Step back. Step back," I commanded, summoning the remnants of my legacy instead of surrendering to it. I reached down, feeling the darkness swirl around me, ready to fuse into something unnameable. The energy crackled within me like a tempest, flooding every nerve with a pulse of raw potential as the shadows screeched and writhed. I called upon every soul, every echo of loss, desperation, and unfulfilled promises that haunted this realm. A luminous light erupted from within, illuminating my form as I spoke the incantation that once enslaved me, twisting its meaning into liberation. I am the vessel, but I will control the shadows. With each syllable, the tendrils of darkness twisted and convulsed, spitting angry voices, unwilling to accept their defeat. You will break, you will break. They howled as the pulsating energy transformed into a fierce gale, cascading outward from the epicenter of my will, and then it happened. The shadows shrieked, a sound that felt like ice ripping through my veins. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the figures of the lost, the girl's pleading face alongside those of anguished souls, no longer tethered to malicious intent, but yearning for release. I wielded every ounce of that energy, interposing it between me and the shadows swirling in vicious defiance, setting my intentions to shatter our chains. As the shadows imploded under the weight of my resolve, the old man's twisted grin faltered. Moments passed like centuries as the darkness itself shattered like glass, scattering into a million ephemeral fragments, each whisper a wail of resignation. No. You cannot escape. And with that, everything fractured. What was once an expanse of despair crumbled into a blinding light that engulfed me completely. I gasped as consciousness returned, awakening amidst the echoes of the abyss, but my surroundings transformed into a sacred space shimmering with ethereal light. The malevolent presence of the old man faded as whispers of joy emerged, faces of the lost encapsulated in liberation, their laughter spilling into brilliant hues. I noticed the girl, before me now, shimmering with relief rather than despair. We are free, she choked out, eyes glistening. The chorus of souls danced around us, their tether broken, the shadows that once loomed over us now dissipated like morning mist in the dawning sun. Yet, even as the light reclaimed its dominion, a chill suddenly washed over me, one I could not shake. The remnants of darkness that still lingered beneath the surface whispered all too knowingly, coiling back into the recesses of my mind. Enjoy this victory, it hissed, a faint echo promising lingering dread. The darkness is patient, it waits, and with that unsettling realization, something deep within me grappled with the knowledge that not everything was resolved. Though free, the darkness now crept like a shadow waiting to be summoned again, a delicate balance lingering between the light I fought for and the terror I had unleashed. As I stood under the glimmering cities of ghosts, I felt a sinister gaze on my soul, one that reminded me of my very own reflection within the shadows. You will remember, whispered the remnants of a legacy that refused to die, its tendrils snaking around my heart. You will embrace what you are. And as I took my first step toward this new dawn, the haunting words echoed relentlessly in my mind, the chilling truth that remained. Not all monsters are made of darkness, some linger just beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of weakness, prepared to awaken again.